welcome to another fine edition of It's a Sports Show. As always, Scott Cray alongside me, the one, the only, Dolphin Paul. Dolphin, this is a special edition of It's a Sports Show, unlike any other that we have ever had.
Well, every week was special, but you can see me smiling.
You're special.
There's no doubt I'm special, but let's not offend anybody to start off the show.
It's the football
But this is,
draft version.
I mean, look, I'm in my glory. This, to me,
The man.
Bush.
Bush is the man.
Do you like Bush? I love him.
I mean, he's cool. I mean, he's got, his little Reggie Bush thing going on.
Well,
he's in a little bit of trouble
as you can
right
see,
now.
we're kind of set up for football. We got the main focus of this local area, the Miami
Who's
Dolphins.
this white team with the green?
New England Patriots.
What is that, the Miami Porpoises?
Miami Porpoises and New England Patriots, the two
Now
top
that
teams in
right
the
there,
AFC East.
Super Bowl winning team right there, the New England Patriots.
You probably don't know this, and you don't need to know, but I have like a little rec room in my home, and
Of course
I'm collecting all the NFL mini helmets. I have the AFC complete. So I said, I'll bring in the Patriots and I'll bring in the Dolphins. I said, let me see, does Scott have any teams? And I really couldn't decide. There's so many. I said, I can't bring in every helmet. I mean, there's the Bengals 49ers. I said, it's New England,
Don't
Miami.
make me have to verify myself again.
But listen, I was talking to our fine producer, Mr. Frenchie.
Yep.
And I mentioned that to me, Saturday, which is to me one of the single greatest sports event days.
Of course you did.
And I know a lot of people couldn't
And you
give
watch golf, too.
two hoots about the draft, but to me the draft, I mean, it's just I'm a draft junkie and I love every minute of it, and I watched the whole thing on Saturday. He said it kind of starts the football season. To me, this kind of puts a cap on it.
Really?
Yeah, it does, because I'll tell you why. If you don't win a championship in January,
Yep.
you kind of look forward to new additions on the team. So between January and the draft, you have the free agency and all the football junkie stuff that people like to watch, the combines and crap like that, and it all culminates with the draft. This draft is unlike any other because football players generally contribute a lot sooner than other sports. Of course, hockey, the kids are only 18 years old. Baseball, it could be 5 years down the road. Maybe NBA is the closest, but football is just...
You always have something long-term to say about baseball. Now it's 5 years. Now it's 5 years. It's a long season.
They do. That's the way it is in the draft.
Now,
I like baseball.
I always thought that the draft was the start of the season because that's when you get people on your new upcoming roster. Now, are you going against the grain for the majority of people, or do most people feel like...
I've asked a lot of people this question. It's like half and half.
Yeah.
To me, it is kind of... because football is so intense every week and playoffs and stuff like that, and I follow all the offseason.
It's a short season.
Right, it's a short season. Ding, that's down here.
Unlike baseball.
It's there's a lot of movement. So to me, when I get to the draft, and there's not a lot between the draft and the start of training camps. Maybe a veteran here and there. A guy
I'm not fully aware that there's been a lot going on since the end of the Super Bowl and the start of the draft. I mean, a couple of moves here and there, but not. It's not like the hot stove league in baseball. The baseball season ends, boom, managers get fired.
Dante
people start
Culpepper,
getting traded.
T.O.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's moved.
Well, T.O. I mean, he's talked about year-round, 12 months a year. So,
but anyway. I guess, like I said, there's not a lot actually between it. To me, this caps off the season. I concentrate on golf, which I'm an avid golfer. And then in July and August, we get to football. But neither here nor there. But this is, of course, it's grown into a tremendous event. I mean, you can at least admit that, even if you're not a draft
it's out
junkie.
of control.
It's out of control. We have one of 1,000 magazines that you can buy.
Right.
People make a tremendous living off the draft. I mean, there's hundreds of sites that you can go
especially the players that are in the draft.
And
those
the
are
players
the guys
that are in the draft,
bucks.
especially Mr. Bush, are going to rake in big time.
Well, I mean, we talked about, Reggie Bush and, who are the two guys that have been involved? Matt Leinart and Vince Young, the top three that have been talked about on a regular basis, but kind of been flip-flopped. A lot of people thought one person was ahead of the mix, and Reggie Bush is now at the worst possible time in not a little bit of trouble yet, but his family owns a home. They just moved out, which no one knows how.
Yeah, he moved out 2 days after the report came out.
I mean, what a mess.
And he was driving a Bentley, supposedly.
And my point is that things aren't as clear-cut as maybe we thought.
Yeah, but I don't think that's going to hurt him because it's, the only thing that could hurt is the school. That's not going to hurt his future earnings.
Right.
I mean, I don't think, so let's say the Texans want Reggie Bush. They're not going to say, well, there's a little bit of impropriety. We really don't want him because of his character. I mean, the guy, to me, we talked about this back in the fall. To me, I think Reggie Bush is one of the most fantastic college football players to ever come out. And I said this early last year, so I'm not jumping on any bandwagons. I think
you're talking a difference maker on an NFL team
from
immediately.
From what I saw, highlight-wise, is very few guys that would make that immediate impact as soon as they went into the game. I mean, I saw times when he came in on third down, took the ball, and see you later.
Right.
Not many guys can do it. I think he could be the closest thing to maybe a Barry Sanders or Marshall Faulk a while back when Marshall Faulk was a tremendous player. So, but like you said, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on at the top with the Houston Texans. Maybe signing him. Mario Williams, the defensive end, is another guy that's supposedly climbed into the top 2 or 3. Many people believe he could be the next dominant defensive lineman. So,
from what I gather, too, this draft is thick on defensive players, from what I understand.
Good defensive draft.
You'd know this better than I would. So it makes you wonder why a defensive end would move his way up so quickly with, such a large gathering of that same position throughout the draft, but maybe not so much in the first round, so to speak. I got to be honest with you. I'm into it for the first round. I'm into it to see what the Patriots do. Of course, I'm into it to see what the Niners do. Beyond
that it? The Niners?
It's the Niners, man. Niners, Patriots, it's all, But, I mean, it seems so predictable. It seems like every year there are question marks as to who might go when, but in the end, the fact of the matter is these players go in exactly the same spot you expected them to.
Sometimes it does. I think this is one of those drafts that could really have some variables because of the top 3 or 4 picks, and we can go through them real quick. Reggie Bush to Houston, I think that's going to be a lock, unless they took a guy like Vince Young, who I don't think they would. Reggie Bush to Houston is probably a lock. New Orleans is kind of a little bit of the wild card. Will they take a QB now that they have Drew Brees? Probably not. Mario Williams, defensive end, extraordinaire, supposedly. That could be a guy that they could take. DeBrickashaw Ferguson is another guy, top offensive tackle, head and shoulders above everybody else. A lot of teams like that offensive tackle they can plug in for 10 years, protect the quarterback. So New Orleans is kind of a little bit of the wild card, and I think there might be some trades there at the top. Then you got Tennessee. Do they take Matt Leinart, who was Norm Chow's quarterback when Norm Chow, now the offensive coordinator at Tennessee.
So there's some influence there in
was
Tennessee.
Was at USC. There's a little bit of influence there. Bud Adams, the owner of Tennessee, remember they used to be Houston. He's a big, Houston, Texas guy, and of course Vince Young comes from Texas. I personally think Vince Young's going to drop like a rock. That's just my wilder prediction. It's basically 4 quarterbacks. 3. Leinart, Vince Young, Jay Cutler.
Yep.
Those 3 guys here, probably the top QBs. I think Young or Cutler, one of those 2 guys are going to drop to the middle of the thing. And a team like Miami would certainly probably take one of those 2, even though they've upgraded that position. But the top of the board is pretty interesting. I think
when you say the top now, how far do we have to go? That's what I was going to say. So
I'd say
top
but the first 5
big names?
Yeah, like Vince Young could possibly drop down. We got a whole bunch of mock drafts here. One of them has Vince Young dropping all the way down to 13 to Baltimore.
Wow.
Another one has Vince Young going to Tennessee. Another one has Vince Young going to Oakland at 7. Another one, Oakland at 7. So
for those who aren't as
draft savvy,
draft junkies like you are, why don't you at least rattle off the top 5 picks so people at home understand who's in the mix, what teams have the top 5 picks?
Okay, well, we got the, and we will talk about the New England Patriots.
Do the Texans have the number 1 pick every year, or does it just feel that way?
No, not that. Well, I mean, they're a relatively new team in the league. So we got the Houston Texans, New Orleans Saints, Tennessee Titans, New York Jets, Green Bay Packers, your San Francisco 49ers, Oakland Raiders, Buffalo Bills, Detroit Lions, and Arizona Cardinals. Those are the top 10.
It's amazing to realize that the Jets have the number 4 pick. I don't know if the Patriots just took off so much that you didn't realize just how bad the Jets were playing.
The Jets they haven't been able to sustain a top level. They went, I believe it was 12-4 when Parcells second year, but they seem to drop. They haven't drafted very well.
A lot of trouble in the running game, too.
Most prognosticators have them taking DeBrickashaw Ferguson. Now they got Patrick Ramsey from Washington.
Yep.
They still got Chad Pennington. Now, you know, from an AFC East point of view, I'd rather not have them take Leinart or Jay Cutler or even Vince Young, but, I mean, possibly they could. See, we can make all these prognostications, but we don't know what teams' draft boards look. I'd love to sit in the draft.
And it goes right up to that day, too. We've seen behind-the-scenes stuff.
I mean, the teams have the players rated. I mean, amateurs like us can say, oh, this guy would be a great fit. Oh, you know, he fits in this system.
There's a lot that goes into it beyond what we know.
Diddly squat, right. They have a board, and they're pretty religious with it. They got point values. It's very complicated. And, you know, I mean, they judge it by, sometimes it's not like, if we need a cornerback, do we take a cornerback? Not necessarily true. I mean, you could need a cornerback, and all of a sudden there's a safety there that you have very highly rated. He falls to you, and you're like,
So then at that point,
do you draft for need,
right,
or the best player available?
And that's what I was going to ask you. At what point? Is it beyond the first round, or is it maybe in the first round? Does a team start going for best available as opposed to what will fit in their
That's
team?
a good question, Scott. I'm glad you asked.
I come up with one every once in a while.
You're like the Chris Rose of this. I don't know. Would that be a compliment?
Chris is rolling over right now. Not in his grave. He's not dead, but he's rolling.
No, that is a good question, though. And I think, you know, I'm going to give my own personal opinion. I think in the top 20, 17 to 20, if you're in that lower tier, let's say, or lower third,
right,
however you want to break it up, you probably have more than one need. For instance, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 32, you probably don't have a lot of needs. So you might take a need position if you need depth at linebacker. I mean, if you're in, say, the New York Jets,
right?
Oh, DeBrickashaw Ferguson, tremendous player. Left tackles are hard to find. You might take him, but let's say they needed like I mentioned before, a cornerback,
which isn't going to be available to them as a top tier.
Or might be a cornerback, but they got that safety rated so high.
Right.
You know, when you need 2, 3, 4, 5, or multiple players, I believe you take the best player available.
Yep.
So you don't pass on that play. But let's get to the New England Patriots. That's what most people.
That's what people want to hear about. They got the 21st pick overall.
They got the 21st pick. I would say that their areas of need would be. I know this is a little tricky, but running back. Corey Dillon's in maybe a bounce back year type thing. He's almost like we'll compare him to Kurt Schilling, where he was kind of hurt last year, stumbled along, and people are wondering if.
I think people are willing to give him a chance.
Well, he's got a pretty good contract too, so that plays into it also. Cornerback, which they're not very solid at right now. You know, Ellis Hobbs. You know, I mean, they got Eugene Wilson. They got, you know, Dwayne Starks last year didn't really work out too good. They got Samuel Asante on the other side. So cornerback could certainly be a position with address. Linebacker, that's an interesting position there. Of course, they got Vrabel, Bruschi, Monty Beisel, and Rosie Colvin. They probably need some depth. All those guys are in their 30s.
You know, according to this article that Paul did up for us, they're looking at Bobby Carpenter from Ohio State as a possibility. So.
And we have 4 mock drafts here from different sites. We're not going to name the sites. One of them has him taking the inside linebacker from Maryland, who is rated the top linebacker, D. Quell, which is an interesting name, D. Quell Jackson.
Yep.
And then we have the New England Patriots taking, this pick is interesting here, D'Angelo Williams from Memphis, who is, you know, a lot of people have New England possibly taken him. Him dropping back, he's not in the top tier, but he had a tremendous running back.
Running back.
And 2 of them have him taking D'Angelo Williams, and one of them has him taking Jad Greenway, a linebacker from Iowa, who's also a pretty good prospect. So that's about the areas where we targeted. D'Angelo Williams, very interesting, very productive, had a great career in college as a running back, and you know, he could be one of those guys that.
So we talked about, you had mentioned in your own personal opinion, when you get towards that 17 to 20 spot on the draft, you could possibly take the best available player if he's there. Patriots with the 21st pick fall perfectly in line with that, but they've been so good at addressing needs and making players fit where they need to fit that you think that they'd probably more than likely take the player that they need as opposed to best player available.
Bill Belichick,
money reasons too.
And Bill Belichick also, he finds these players. Of course, it all has to do with who you know in college.
Sure.
You know, people you can call and get good advice from. For instance, last year they took Logan Mankins from Fresno State. I guess Belichick's a good friend with their coach, Pat Hill. So, it might surprise you when the Patriots come up within the first round. For instance, for a couple years in a row there, they took the tight ends.
Right.
Watson, so you really don't know. But, I mean, after Reggie Bush, they pretty much D'Angelo Williams is rated very high. Lawrence Maroney from Minnesota is a possibility. Lendale White, which is Reggie Bush's counterpart there, he could possibly be a fit, but there's rumors now that he gained weight, didn't take care of himself, hamstring. Joseph Adai from LSU, and he's a guy that's pretty interesting. Jarius Norwood from Mississippi State. I kind of looked him up because a lot of people have him as a sleeper going to New England in the second or third round as a running back. So if you're a Pats fan, running back, linebacker, cornerback, I think that's kind of the area. I know you mentioned Bobby Carpenter, which is, from Ohio State, a tremendous worker, tremendous athlete. He could possibly fit in the Belichick mold. So,
that has a lot to do with it, too, if you want to talk about that. Some players that might be best available or best fit for the position might not be best fit for the team.
Absolutely. That's 100% correct.
Belichick and the New England Patriots certainly are a team that you have to fit and you have to go along with the team, or it's just not going to happen.
They do a tremendous amount of work on these plays. They don't just do like I do or regular people do, grab these charts and look at what these guys, they do interviews and they talk to coaches. So, they might have, they might have 1 through 5, but they might have a player rated a lot higher, or they might have a guy. You've got to go by value, too. If you love a guy, but he's third-round material, you don't take him in the second round.
Right.
It's just bad drafting. So, like I said, we don't really know what Belichick's draft chart is. So, he could surprise us all in the first round. Of course, the Patriots are very quiet with what they do. They operate very low-key, but, it is all a crapshoot.
Right.
If we look back 2 or 3 drafts ago, you'd see plays, you'd say, wow, look at this guy. They took him. Wow, he stinks. And,
And then it flips the other way. The Patriots know well about that with Tom Brady.
And the draft.
You never know who you're going to get later, and the draft's going to turn out to be a superstar.
That's a good point. The first round is made for media and glamour.
Absolutely.
But the meat of the draft, 3rd, 4th, 5th round, is when you can find the gems, i.e. Tom Brady, who's not going to come along every day. But that's where you make your drafts, not in a first-round pick. Sometimes.
Like I said before, it's fairly predictable.
Curtis Martin, we can go on and on. Joe Montana, Thurman Thomas, Zach Thomas, Teddy Bruschi, Tom Brady. These guys were all picked beyond the first round, weren't the glamour guys. So, even though we look at the first round and it's very exciting and we go to draft shows and everything, and most people like you, average person, will look at the first round of the draft and then say, I'm going to go do yard work.
Because the assumption is when you have a player that has the stigma of number 1 draft pick, a first-round draft pick, that's supposed to be your star.
Those are the plays too, the plays that you fed for like a month before the draft.
You're right. It's media creation.
And all of a sudden, next year you could be watching the Patriots and going, where did they get this? Jarius Norwood, who's him?
Right.
He could be a guy in the second.
Reggie Bush could be sitting with a torn hamstring on the sideline.
You never know. I like Reggie Bush. I think I'm excited just to even watch him. But, it's funny that you mentioned that. And if you look, I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know. Every single one of these players, I often joke about it because it'll say, like, Scott Cray, blazing speed, can make the cuts, great vision, durable and good attitude. That's the positives. Then the negatives. Killed family, really doesn't attack well. It's like, hello.
Right.
So it's like, it's almost saying he's going to be good, but he might not.
Right.
Every player has his positives and negatives. Some are more than others, but it's funny.
And a lot of the negatives are personal. They're not on-field
Some are personal.
Because if the negatives were on-field, they probably wouldn't be talked about so much. So their positives are going to be on-field. Their negatives are going to be personal stuff.
And a lot of players have dropped down. Guys like Warren Sapp had a rumor of smoking marijuana.
Yep.
Dan Marino had some drug rumor, which he never did drugs in the NFL, at least not that we know of.
Right.
He dropped way down in that great quarterback class of '83.
Yep.
So there's always stuff that comes out before the draft. This is a big war, and teams will throw stuff all over the place, and teams will jump ahead of other teams. So, but it's not an exact science. If you, like I said, we can take all these mock drafts. Some guys will think Vince Young's going to be a great quarterback. Some say no way.
Right.
Vice versa. Jay Cutler, another guy who played for a school that wasn't as highly touted, Vanderbilt.
It comes back to certain players could end up being a superstar on one team, and had they been drafted on another, maybe got lost in the mix. You got to fit into the team.
We didn't really talk about that. Different systems. I mean, if you're a 3-4 linebacker, you're probably going to fit in well with Belichick. A lot of teams are going to 3-4 now, so that's hurt a lot of players depending on the system. I mean, where would Tom Brady be without Belichick? You know, I mean, that's hindsight, but you never know.
One feeds the other, basically.
A lot of quarterbacks got drafted to New Orleans, which I think is the quarterback purgatory.
Right.
I mean, how does Joe Montana work out in New Orleans?
Exactly.
We don't know that.
Let's talk money for a little bit.
We're getting paid for this?
You wish. It's all about fame, baby. Nothing but fame. What do teams know going into this draft about how much a player is expecting, not just for a contract, but for an actual signing bonus? Because it's turned out over the past several years, the signing bonus turns out to be the killer for some teams or not, and you end up having holdouts. You have rookies who have not even stepped on an NFL field yet are holding out because they haven't been signed to X amount of dollars, especially with a signing bonus. What do teams know about what these players are expecting for money?
You know, that's another good question. People probably think we sat here like an hour before the show and set this up, but this is really not set up. Another good question. The answer is they're pretty much all slotted. They have rookie pools and rookie caps, and it pretty much goes off last year. That's the general consensus. Like Houston right now is trying to negotiate with Bush and Mario Williams to try to see if one player agrees.
So there's negotiations involved before the draft even starts?
Well, with the number one team.
Okay. One only, because it's been...
Well, because they can negotiate with whoever they want because they have the number one pick. I mean, you can't negotiate at number 16.
So there's something advantageous that people might not have thought about.
Well, with the number one pick, you can negotiate. For instance, let's say they love Reggie Bush and they love Mario Williams. Listen, we will be happy with either one of these players.
Yep.
You negotiate. Reggie Bush wants, he's maybe unsignable. I'm not saying that's true. It's probably not. But, you could negotiate because you're the number one team. You could come up with a contract. As far as everybody else, they get slotted. For instance, if you're the 11th player taken in the draft, and I see Scott Cray at the number 12 signed a, contract with a, $5 million signing bonus for 4 years, blah, blah, blah. $1.5 million a year with a $4 million signing bonus, just to throw numbers in the air.
Sure.
If I'm the 10th pick, I got to get something comparable to that.
Right.
So a lot of times that's where the holdouts come too. But there's some teams like the Cardinals, teams like that who have a reputation of not getting players in camp in time. So, but that's a good point because it is very important. They're tough to negotiate, and if you get a skill player specifically,
yep.
And the kid doesn't come in on time, a whole new system, NFL way of doing things, that could impede their progress for the first or second year. So
now, say Texas decides they don't want to take Reggie Bush. And now it's up to New Orleans to go for that as the number 2 pick. Let's say Reggie Bush, and we saw this, I believe it was 2 years ago, with one of the younger brothers we'll talk about in a sec, but say New Orleans comes up and Bush says, no way, I am not going to New Orleans. How much leverage does a player have, especially in a case where he might want to go to Tennessee as the number 3 pick, much more than New Orleans? What can a player do at that point?
That happened with Eli Manning.
Right. That was a little extraordinary, wasn't it?
To San Diego. Well, it's happened in the past.
I'm still ticked at Eli Manning about the whole thing.
And they lose a lot of flavor with favor, with the general public. You can do that. You don't have a right to.
Right.
But if you're the Patriots and you're drafting me, as let's say I could be maybe hold the ball for the kicker, because that's about what I could do.
Well, that's different for
the
Patriots.
Could say, listen, I don't want to. No, I'm just using the Patriots as an example. If they had the number 2 pick, say, listen, don't even bother because I'm not playing for you.
Right.
I don't want to go to New England. It's too cold. Blah blah blah. That's just an example. You're kind of under the gun. You could draft that player, have the rights to him.
Yep.
He could sit out the year, but generally you got to ask yourself, how far do I go? I mean, do I take this player and lose a number 1 pick or negotiate for 6 months until he's happy, until he changes his mind? Do I draft him, trade him? So that has happened in the past.
Because you could be left with a wasted pick if the
John Elway with the Colts was another example. So that can happen. Not many players will do it, but some players, they get that. It could be a marketing thing. If you're a skill player, you want to go to New York. You can make a lot of money off the field in some cities. Let's face it.
Oh, absolutely.
New England not as much, but the New Yorks and the LAs and even like the Miami or bigger cities,
you make big bucks out there.
You can make big bucks off the field instead of going to say like a Tennessee or an example like that. But that usually goes for the top 1 or 2 players in the country, specifically skilled players, quarterbacks, guys that probably get a lot of endorsements. So that's the inner workings of the draft. Good job, Scott Cray.
I didn't say a word, man. I just threw it all your way. You know what's going on.
We got all this stuff here, and we'll sit down Saturday and watch the whole thing.
My one sheet.
Oh, I love this stuff. How much time do we got left?
Probably more than enough to talk a little Red Sox, I'm sure. No one wants to tell us. It's a mystery as to how much time we have left. That's okay. The Boston Red Sox continuing their winning ways, and
well, did they save this sweep from the Toronto Blue Jays?
Yes. Well, Toronto, out of the chute,
good
heavy-hitting team.
Well, they were a good team.
Not to mention, man, did you see the series in Toronto? It looks like that field is like 7 miles by 10 miles in size. There's just nothing but grass all the way around. And the outfield, you need some coverage. It's a shot of missing Johnny Damon and the speed that he put down to cover center field. Not that scenario came up often, but you're right. They stopped themselves from being swept, but you've got a lot of positives. Kurt Schilling, off to his first.
A big positive.
Can you believe as much of a great career that Kurt Schilling has had? This is his first 4-0 start ever. I mean, that's pretty amazing to me. He's played for some pretty good teams.
He's given up less than 2 runs per start, and I think Paul Frenchie, our producer, said that his ERA was, I believe, under 2.
Right. He's just sick. I mean, he's doing like what Clemens did last year.
We talked about that last year. We had a lot of talks about Kurt Schilling, whether we should give him a pass. We had a lot
of. I think we did. I know I did. I gave him all the pass in the world.
We should give him a pass for what he did, in the World Series, and with him being hurt. That's why I compared him to Corey Dillon. Tremendous year. Next year hurt. Does he bounce back? And Kurt Schilling, I mean, if he could pitch close to what he's doing now the whole year long, Red Sox are going to be right in the thick of it with Josh Beckett and the other guys that they have.
Josh Beckett pitched very well. A lot of question marks for him coming into the team for the sheer fact that nobody knew if he was going to stay healthy. So far, so good. As far as I'm concerned, we got to go. We got to get a little. It's funny you mentioned the blisters because that was an issue, and I heard, or I either read the article, or I heard on the radio, and I can't ingest and understand where I get these things from. But a good point was made. Wait till that warm weather comes, because that's blister season. The big question marks as far as a lot of guys down south in Florida getting blister problems because of the weather, and that's what I want to wait and see. Wait till those 85, 90-degree days hit. Then let's find out if we've got blister problems. I'm still walking on eggshells with that guy because it's just you look at the past.
Well,
but so far, so good. I can't complain.
It is only blisters, too, hopefully.
Well, we saw what happened with Derek Lowe with blisters.
I've never seen a chronic blister problem, but no, I would agree with you. You'd have to let this thing play out because
what's going on back there?
It's a pretty long season.
We need an actual board up there to keep
Maybe you can throw darts or something. But
9 times now you've said that in the past 3 weeks.
No, the Red Sox are 12-7. The Yankees are coming back up. They're now over 500.
And Toronto very much in the mix. Baltimore not playing terrible ball either, although it doesn't, show in their record. But and then
they're 11-9. They're in second place. So, it's going to be a pretty tough. I was going to say AFC East. My mind American League East. So.
Right.
But, you've got to be encouraged by the Red Sox pitching. And, you've got the David Ortiz bunting, which is a whole. We'll probably have to do that next show to talk about that a little bit.
People went nuts about that. There's your boy Scott Cordischi making the argument that he doesn't care if Big Papi gets up there and bunts, 4 times a game and gets on 3 out of those 4 times.
Well, I don't think that was the intent of the argument. Not that I'm defending Scott, because I also agree.
You wouldn't defend Scott.
I also agree that if they got that big shift on and third base is open in the right situation, I don't have a problem with him butting and getting on first.
Guy should be mashing the ball. That's what he's all about.
We'll have
That's
to
an
save
argument
that
we'll save for next week. But so far, so good. Everyone's off to a good start. The big question mark, John Papelbon with David Wells out. Will Papelbon be shifted out of the bullpen and into the starting rotation with Folk playing a little better?
That is a big question.
We'll see what happens in the
coming
week.
Enjoy the draft. We'll have some draft post.
I'll open up a bag of Doritos
next week.
We'll talk some
more baseball.
It's a sports show at yahoo.com. As always, the man, Dolphin Paul, and I'm just here for the ride, Scott Cray. Thanks to everyone behind that window. We'll see you next week.